dig into that, maybe get you guys thinking about some of those, and hopefully we've got your heads going, and we can apply some of this to some real challenges you guys have here, or real, as I say, opportunities here in Newport News. Okay, so I want us to rethink the nature of infrastructure, and that's actually sort of central to my new book, which is actually The Emotional Infrastructure of Places. So when I say infrastructure, most of the time we think about roads, and bridges, and dams, and all kinds of big stuff. And that is, of course, true. Infrastructure is all around us. It is literally all around us. But oftentimes it's like the background noise that we don't necessarily hear. And infrastructure, for most people, is mostly invisible until it fails. And then it becomes very evident. It's like, oh, infrastructure, yeah, this is important. And we as a nation, we have had decades of deferred maintenance on our infrastructure. And those bills are coming due. And I'm sure you guys as a city are feeling this as well. Here's my challenge that in this rush to reinvest in infrastructure, and of course we're going to have to be doing this. My hope is that we don't invest at the lowest common denominator. Hey, let's make it functional, let's make it safe, we got a lot of stuff to do, let's get it out the door, get her done kind of thing. No, infrastructure, there is an incredible opportunity as we reinvest and rebuild this infrastructure. To not just do it to the bare bones engineering sort of schematic or something like that. Because here's the thing about infrastructure. We live with it for a long time. And anything we live with and are in proximity to over a period of time, it starts to affect us. You know, and the emergent qualities of this infrastructure only manifest over time. You know, when we built the interstate highway system, we didn't intend for it to create a car culture that puts us in our cars and puts us in a daily commute that is actually literally bad for our health, but we did. When we built the suburbs and gated communities, we didn't intend to isolate us from our neighbors there, but we did. When we built smartphones and ubiquitous, always-on and persistent Wi-Fi, and connectivity, we didn't intend to create a bunch of hunchbacks who are perpetually on their phones, even to text the person who's literally sitting next to them. But we did, right? So infrastructure has externalities to it. Many positive, but the negative ones are the ones that often surprise us because we don't necessarily think them through. And then when we start to looking at how we retroactively fix those things, we immediately go to sort of an engineering sort of solution. And I get that there is this notion that maybe we don't want to overthink this stuff, right? I'm all for clarity and I'm all for simplicity as well. And people are going to look at this and say, hey man, it's just a bridge. It's like, I get it. And of course a bridge has to be functional and it has to be safe. But a bridge can also be more than that. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. In fact, this is the 8th Street Bridge in Port Angeles, Washington. And in addition to being a perfectly functional bridge, it has also become the epicenter of suicide in this county, in this day and age of the opioid crisis that many of our cities and counties are facing. So again, we don't intend for a bridge to become the place where people go to end their lives, but that is what has happened here in Port Angeles. Now, the city, when this problem arises, well then in a very logical and also in a necessary way says, well, what should we do? We should put up some fencing over the bridge, which of course they should. It's smart. That is a very logical response to this particular problem. But when I was having this conversation with the city up there, and they told me about this, it's very sad, very shocking. It's okay, yeah, you got to put up the fencing. But I said, what about some other approaches that maybe are a little bit more emotionally intelligent to this? How about if we do this? There on the bridge, as people are walking up, stencils, chalk, a little bit of art. Something says, "You are loved. It gets better. Call your mother." Before somebody goes out there and does something tragic, maybe those little messages might trigger something that maybe makes them rethink that whole process. Yes, the fences are necessary, but we need to think about this infrastructure not just to the most mechanical engineering sort of specifications. We should think about it in another way. That if we add some emotional intelligence to this, we're going to hopefully get a better result. And again, it's not just, this is a pretty serious one there. But and I'm not suggesting that in and of itself is going to be the solution, but it's part of a solution. So again, we need to be thinking about this stuff with a different lens. The stuff that we build has impacts on us. Sometimes, again, we don't even fully appreciate it.
A sign like,
yeah.
You remember the sign, psychiatry, 5 cents?
Oh, with Lucy?
With Lucy.
Yes, the
Something
Peanuts
like
one.
that.
The doctor is in. Call
The
this
doctor
number.
is in.
So in the book that I have, that you guys have here, Love Where You Live, I read about the first half of this story. This is about Lake Eola. This became really, I wrote about this in the second book there, but I realized how important it actually was, and I came back to it in the new book. So in 2009, this fountain, well, let me preface this. This is downtown Orlando. Orlando is not Disney World, by the way. Most people think it is, but it's really not. It's actually, there's a proper downtown. It's actually a really lovely city. And Lake Eola is sort of at the heart of their downtown. And there's a fountain that's been there for almost 100 years there. But in the 2000s, this old fountain was really chugging along. It was taking a lot of money just to maintain it. It was kind of falling apart at the time. And actually, in 2009, the fountain was struck by lightning. And it totally fried the innards of the fountain. And it was going to cost several $1 million to properly fix. And remember, 2009 was awfully tight for city budgets everywhere, right? But the Mayor Buddy Dyer, made the commitment and says, no, we're going to fix the fountain. In fact, we're going to fix it, bring it back even bigger and better than before. And on July 4th, 2011, they rechristened the fountain, and it's gorgeous, right? So it's got all kind of new, the hydraulics in it, it's got a light show, the whole deal. Totally programmable, very cool. The mayor told me that night was one of his favorites. He said he had a great time there. After they rechristened the fountain, he said he was walking around the lake. Thousands of people came down for the event. And folks were coming up to him and thanking him, saying, this is great, this is awesome. It felt like the heart of my city had gone dark. Thank you for bringing this fountain back. And what the mayor was doing, and I don't think he fully appreciated it at the time, and I hadn't given it a name yet either at that time, he was building emotional infrastructure. This was something, a small thing, a relatively small thing. It was a love note, certainly. It's a small thing that had a big outsized impact on the way people felt about their place as a whole, right? And again, this lake was very much a psychic center for this city. People identified this lake as being sort of central to their identity as a city, as Orlando. And that was important, okay? I didn't fully realize how important it was until I start to come back to this, and I look at that through another lens, and in the aftermath of this, the Pulse nightclub shooting, in June of 2016. At the time, it was the largest mass shooting in the United States there. Now, in the aftermath of these types of events, and I'm sure you guys know this, your neighbors here in Virginia Beach, in the aftermath of these types of events, communities need to come together, and they need to grieve, and they need places to mourn. They just need places where they can come to be together, to ask questions, and to help start that healing process. And when Orlando needed to come together, and they needed to grieve and all this stuff, and this was not organized by the city. When they came together at Lake Eola. 40,000 people came out a couple days after the event. Now, I don't think Mayor Dyer ever anticipated that this was going to be the setting, that this was going to be a necessary thing in his city. But when it happened, the city needed this. They needed this kind of space. Now, in this day and age, unfortunately, as we think about all of this other really good stuff, there has to be maybe something in the back of our minds that says, what happens if the worst thing happens here? And it's happened in Virginia Beach. It happened right next door for you guys. This is, unfortunately, this is something we have to be thinking about. So emotional infrastructure is not just there to make us feel good. Of course, that should be part of the process. But emotional infrastructure is there in our time of need. When we literally want to fall to our knees and weep out of anger and frustration, that is where, that is part of what we are building for folks. So again, it's not just roads and bridges and schools and all that stuff. Those are very necessary. And we can do all of that, but we can do all of that with a better sense of the outcome and the impact that it's going to have on us over time. Infrastructure, it's all around us, but it's background noise. And we don't fully realize the positive and the negative impacts that it's having on us. But we, as the people who are implementing this stuff and thinking about this stuff, I think we owe it to ourselves and to our constituents to be thinking about this in a different way. So, in that sort of spirit, I want to sort of move into the last part of what I want to get you to think about is some of this infrastructure, frankly, it just makes us mad and sad. What am I talking about? I'm talking about traffic. Right? Traffic makes us mad. There's few things that are as infuriating as being stuck in traffic. And I understand going up and down because we're a long, narrow city. Going from A to B, hard to do, right? And then even east and west become sort of challenging. And again, I get that. Our commute is amongst the most stressful time of our entire day. And it is literally bad for us. Our blood pressure goes up. Our muscles stiffen. Our negative serotonin levels go up. And so there's all kinds of bad things that happen because of sitting in traffic. And traffic is one of those things that we try to fix. Well, how do we fix that? Well, we try to get kind of engineering, get smart about it. Or the most obvious one says, we need to add another lane, or 2, or 3. Thing is, traffic is one of those things that's called induced demand. The more lanes of traffic you add, the more cars you add. It will fill up. Induced demand, right? And the other corollary to this is parking. Every city deals with parking, and I'm sure this is going to be part of the conversation moving forward, because it is sort of baked into this. And parking is the other end of induced demand. You add more parking, you add more cars at the same time. There last night, and I know you guys have a ton of surface parking lots there near downtown, and surface parking lots are absolute killers for vibrancy. I get the cars need a place to go and all this other kind of stuff. And we have lots of conversations around parking. And we try to engineer parking. We get smart about it. You've seen those auto stackers, that you can put cars in like shelves up and down. That's an engineering solution. We build more parking decks. We do angle-in parking. We do all kinds of stuff around this. But here's the thing. All of our emotions around parking are negative. Right? Think about it. Other than that very rare moment when you're trying to get somewhere and somebody pulls out right in front of you and you slide right in behind them, there, and for a minute you feel like a god. It's like, yes! But that's pretty short-lived, right? Because then you still have to pay for the parking. You still have to figure it out. Is it the app? Do I have to go down to the corner and get my number and put that in the thing, and then do I put it on my windshield or do I not? It's really kind of confusing, right? And the thing is, people will tell you, and you hear this all the time, that they say, parking is a pain in the ass. Right? Now, what does that actually mean? Well, it could mean it's expensive. Okay, yeah, I get that. The parking costs money. That maybe they think there's not enough of it. More likely, they don't. They're miffed the fact it's like, well, parking's a pain in the ass because I want to park here because I'm going right there, and I got to park over here instead. Parking is pain, is a pain in the ass. Or here's the one that they won't tell you: that they don't understand how the system works. They can't figure out the app or that machine that they now have to go put a credit card in and the number. I don't get it. So they will tell you that parking is a pain in the ass, and they think, oh, well, we need more of it and it's too expensive. No, part of it, and I think a big part of it, is they don't understand how the system works, or they're a little intimidated about parking in a parking garage or something like that. So there's all kinds of other stuff that goes around this thing. Parking is one of those things that when we try to solve it, we actually then said, well, we need to add more parking lots, parking decks, and all this kind of stuff. And I think this is kind of crazy. If you think about it, here's something that makes us mad and sad, right? And our solution to it is to give you more of the thing that makes you mad and sad. Now, I get that we have to have parking, right? And this is a necessary part of the equation. But the way we approach this is very wrong-headed. Because even if you give people more parking, well, yeah, let's create more parking garages, more surface parking, they're still going to be mad about it because you don't love anything, about parking. It's like it's maybe just a little less irritating than it was before. That is not a recipe for love, right? That is a recipe for, okay. No, let's focus on the other thing. So the other thing that we need to be thinking about here, instead of worrying about parking the way that, let's focus on the other end. We need to make the journey worth the effort. We need to make downtown worth coming downtown for. We need to make Newport News worth coming to. My job is there. It's beautiful. It's fun. There's great restaurants. There's places to shop. There's vitality here. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a little hard to park on a Saturday evening. In fact, it probably should be hard to park on a Saturday evening, right? I mean, think about the best places in the world. You can't park in New York City. You can't park in Manhattan. Or if you do, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. San Francisco, Chicago, all these cities that are highly, highly desirable, parking is not easy. Nor should it be, right? So again, rather than trying to figure out how to give them more parking, again, the thing that makes them mad and sad, let's focus on the other side. Let's make downtown, let's make the city really vibrant and attractive and interesting so that they will forget. It's like, yeah, I had to park over here instead, but man, I'm here and this is awesome. Focus on making the journey worth the effort. Parking. Yeah, because you're going to hear a lot about that. Because again, from our constituents, they're going to say that. And you're going to hear that, oh yeah, they say parking is difficult. what you need to unpack in that is all of that stuff that I talked about. And remember that at the other end of that, even if we give them more parking, they're still not going to love us for that. So, a few final thoughts here, and then we're going to sort of dig into this particular document. I know we're sort of going through this this planning process, and I'm sure we've gotten a lot of public input. We're probably going to get some more public input. Certainly, as these projects sort of come forward, we're going to need to get the public's input because we want to have those focus groups. We want to have those conversations with the community, as we should. I do believe, however, that when we do those types of events, we tend to ask the wrong question around this. Okay, we will always ask, say, hey, community. What do you think about Riverview Farm Park, City Farm? What do you think about that? And then, to their credit, because people, when they show up to an event like that, to their credit, they will try to answer that question. But they don't understand necessarily, redevelopment or the economic development strategies or all the other stuff behind that. But they're going to try to do that, or they're going to talk to you about, downtown, and they won't understand, well, why we have to do transportation this way. But to their credit, they try to respond, right? But it's like they're speaking a language they don't fully understand because we ask the wrong question. Instead of asking them what they think, how about if we ask them what they feel? And more importantly, ask them what do they want to feel about this place, right? Because when you ask somebody, what do you feel? You say, well, I actually feel kind of apprehensive. I feel a little nervous here. Well, what do you want to feel? It's like, I'd like to feel inspired here. And then we, as the designers of a place, says, oh, you don't feel safe here? I can fix that. I can design something that will make you feel safer. And it goes back to a lot of the stuff we talked about before. You don't feel inspired here? Okay, that's challenge accepted. Let's inspire people when they walk into this plaza or through this gateway to to our downtown or to the city. Let's make them feel positive and good about this stuff. Because when we ask them what they feel, I think if they are if we can elicit an honest response out of them, it's like, okay, I can do a lot with that. But if they say, well, I wish it could do this, or I think you should do this, blah, blah. Okay, but again, I think we could get some really great information from them, asking them what they feel, and more importantly, what do they want to feel when they come to a place. Because again, we can design for that outcome. This one actually was a conversation that Dave and I had during the break, and he was talking about sort of, yes?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so even if we ask the question, what they feel and what they want to feel, who are we asking that question?
Well, that's a good, yeah. We're probably asking sort of the usual suspects.
The children, the teenagers, the millennials, and the Gen
Yes.
Zs, X's, and the X, Ys, and Z. Who are we asking that question to?
Yes, all of them.
Okay,
I
that's
think-
good to know.
Yeah, but again,
Because what I want,
yeah, maybe
what
different.
we feel,
Right.
is going to be different than what somebody else
Right.
thinks. But
So-
if we're talking about building a community for everybody, then we need to.
Well, we need to take all the input, but we also need to remember that ultimately what we're building right now is actually for the next
For the next
generation.
generation.
Right. So we may, for us to sort of collectively build to our 40-plus taste is probably doing a disservice to those who are in their 20s right now. And a perfect example around that is the car and parking, right? Study after study shows that millennials don't look at cars the way we do. We looked at the car as freedom, right? People were rushing out to get their license at 16, and we thought about that. They don't do that anymore, right? Because and they say, no, why would I even bother with that? I'd rather, that's what I think Uber is for, right? And beyond Uber, they're looking at, what nearest cities that have scooters. You guys seen scooters yet? Yeah, they're coming. They're coming to that secondary and tertiary cities. They will be here at some point. And how you respond to that? It's like and a lot of cities say, well, we just want to ban them. It's like, no, you can't ban them because the reason why scooters are coming to a place is because people want transportation options. In fact, it's not even transportation. They want mobility options. They want to be able to move through their city without a car. And we, as the powers that be, need to respect that. And it's like, okay. Then scooters are going to be part of the solution. They may not be a long term, but for time being, their scooters are in the mix. Bike share, that's part of that. I'm seeing those have you seen those one-wheel things? Those one-wheel skateboards? They look really cool.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to do it, but I know I'm not 29 there as well. So all of that, recognizing that people want to be able to move through their community without a car. How do we enable that? How do we support more of that, right? And again, to our tastes, we might build it to, well, of course, I've got a car, you've got a car, we should have parking here. It's It's not for us. Yes, we have to manage that, we have to accommodate that today, but the long-term vision is that next generation. Good question. So what Dave was telling me about was sort of this idea of code enforcement. And I get that. What's interesting is that every city deals with code enforcement. But I heard from, and I was trying to remember the city that I read about this, that had changed the name of code enforcement, instead becomes community standards. Now just think about that simple name change around that. Code enforcement is, hey, you can't do that. No, I'm gonna enforce the code upon you. It feels very sort of penal and punishment around that. But community standards says, hey, I'm sorry, your lawn isn't really good enough for our community. You haven't mowed it. We have standards here in Newport News, and I'm sorry, you're not meeting them. So we need you to up your game, right? You know, somebody was telling me about you guys don't have an ordinance that prohibits people creating a car auto dealership in their front lawn there as well. It's like, okay, well, community standards says, you know, we really shouldn't do that there. So we're going to pass this law, and people say, what about freedom of this, freedom of that? I say, well, I get that. There's a place for that, but we have standards. And that's not good enough for our neighborhoods. That's not good enough for Newport News. So I think just that name change alone might help us think about the way that we actually do this stuff. And instead of being sort of harsh and penal, again, we have to have that. Because, you know, at some point, somebody's not complying, yeah, they're going to get a fine. But if we actually approach this with the idea is, wait a minute, we're trying to get people to live up to the standard that we are aspiring to, you know, here at Newport News. Kind of feels different, doesn't it? Community standards versus code enforcement, something to consider. Something we could do next week. Yeah. There.
Do that code?
Yeah. Here's the other thing we're talking about. And I tell this other story about some other stuff that I didn't share that one today, but here's the outcome of this one story. And I will share with you this, that no is a lazy answer. And we will reflexively oftentimes say no to things because it's a little different, it's a little outside the norm of what we typically do. It doesn't fit neatly into some bucket that we're familiar with. And again, no is a lazy answer. There. And I think we can do better. We need to find ways to say yes to things, you know. And the thing is all of you might collectively agree, oh yeah, you're right, we should be saying, we should be being more positive, and we should say yes to something. But governance happens 2 or 3 levels down. And you guys know that those folks don't get into trouble for saying no to something. They're afraid of saying yes to the wrong thing. This goes back to that fear of failure kind of thing, and competent failure. They're afraid they're going to say yes to the wrong thing, and then it's going to come back and bite them in the ass.
Yeah.
Well, we need to make it okay. It's like, well, wait a minute. You've been doing this for years. You ought to know something that's patently stupid. It's like, no, you can't do that. No, okay, that seems a little different, but okay, let's figure out a way, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. Because again, no is a lazy answer there, and I think we need to make it okay for our folks to say yes to the right things, and that's a leadership question, you know, there, and that's a leadership challenge for you guys to make it okay for your constituents and for your departments, the people that you manage, to make it okay for them to maybe do something a little bit different, or bring it to your attention. I'd like to say yes to this, but I'm a little worried about this. Let's go talk to Collie, and we'll figure it out, and we'll make this happen, okay? So again, no is a lazy answer, and we can do better. And if we want to have more of these